Hello and welcome back to IGN Live at E3 and a very special E3 edition of Beyond. I'm Max Scoville and joining me today, Marty Sleva, Andrew Goldfarb, and Daniel Krupa.
Hey.
How you guys doing?
I'm doing swell.
Yeah,
we're at E3.
Yeah.
Now, right off the bat, I want to say that we're doing this a little bit out of the ordinary because we're at E3, we're in a big studio, and there's lights and cameras and action. Hollywood, everybody. So, we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Obviously, we may not hit on everything because there's a lot of stuff coming out of E3 that we want to talk about. But we do this show every week. So first, let's get to the big stuff from Sony's conference. Let's talk about Spider-Man.
I want to talk about Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I want to talk about Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
It's so good. It's so good. I saw the BCD. I had a smile on my face for that entire demo.
Yeah.
Like, it is exactly what I wanted.
You have your face painted like Spider-Man as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I was in my Spider-Man underoos, and I was really...
I mean, this was, we said, like, one of the big things Sony needed to do this year was they gave us the tease last year, and they needed to deliver on the promise. And we all trust Insomniac. They're great developers, but we're like, how is this game going to pan out? And I feel like by ending the show with an extended 10-ish minute demo, like, that's exactly what they needed to do to ensure me that this game's going to be cool.
And to clarify some stuff, so like I talked to Brian Intihar, who's a creative director and former coworker of Marty.
Yeah.
He clarified a lot of stuff. You are Peter Parker. Like, you were playing as Peter Parker, which I think some people were confused about.
Because of the stinger at the end with Miles Morales.
Yeah, the stinger at the end, some people interpreted as he, like, Superman down really quick and changed clothes or something.
Spider-Man can't, like, teleport and shapeshift.
Yeah, exactly.
Familiarize yourself with the source
Crazy
material,
Miles Morales powers.
So you are Peter Parker, Spider-Man. You've been on the job for 8 years. So he is very experienced.
I kind of love that you're not like the pimply high schooler who's going through puberty, but you're like, I've done this.
Because we're getting that Spider-Man in a movie very soon.
Yeah,
So it's possible to have another embodiment.
And that's what I think is so cool. Like, they compared him to a elite athlete in peak condition.
Okay.
Like, he is like...
That just makes me wonder, how are you going to unlock new skills and abilities, though?
Well, and that's why I wonder about the Miles Morales thing. Because they won't talk about it yet, but, like, my gut... I really think there's going to be more to that. I think I don't know if it's like co-op or something, but like I feel like they wouldn't intro Miles Morales and they wouldn't show him in E3 press conference if he's just a cameo. Like, they wouldn't have done that.
It could be a very significant supporting character. You know, if you play Uncharted, you play a lot of scenes with other characters in the room. You're talking to them. Like, maybe he's training Miles up, he's on the opposite end of the room, he's taking people down, and you're working through levels together.
That would be really cool.
But I kind of like the idea of, like, in a Metroid or a Castlevania game where, like, Peter Parker as Spider-Man is the character you begin with, who has all the powers unlocked, but Miles Morales is the thing where death comes and strips you of all your abilities.
Yeah.
And so you're playing as, Peter Parker has the entire skill tree fleshed out, but then Miles Morales has to learn this because he's a kid.
And part of it, so like what I found most intriguing and what I like wrote a preview about is they said this game is very heavy on Peter Parker. Like, and so it is as much about Peter Parker as it is Spider-Man.
I love that.
I
think
love
that's
that too.
so cool.
And I think that's what Telltale Batman was trying to do a little bit.
I want to know if they're going to
to
have stuff where you're playing as Peter Parker. Did it sound like that's the case?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, like they very heavily implied that there's major Peter Parker moments. Like, there's even in that demo, like, he's chasing after Martin Lee, who's Mr. Negative, but Martin Lee is also Aunt May's boss. And so he wants to take the guy down, but it's also like in his head, he's like, also, oh no, like Aunt May is working for this villain.
Do we know anything about Peter Parker's profession in this game?
What they said during the demo is that they're not ready to talk about it yet, but where he works and who he works for will be very surprising.
He's a vlogger?
Yeah.
He's
a vlogger for IGN.
All right, that'd be weird. I was going to say, like, Sony's been rolling camera mode into so many of their games, and it makes perfect sense to have, like, camera mode that's actually got
as a mechanic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I love that.
And then have
That's
that on
really
top
cool
of it.
idea.
Yeah, we've seen, like, bits and pieces of that with, stuff like Far Cry and GTA where you have to take a photo here and there, but
or maybe it even is like, maybe it's something like you play as Peter Parker for a while and then he gets hurt or put out of commission, and then you take over as Miles Morales, and that's what they mean by being about
Sony
Peter
in general
Parker.
really want to step up awareness of Miles Morales as a character, because they've got an animated movie coming up where Miles Morales
That's
is the main
right.
character.
Yeah.
This is a great way of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And
100%.
I mean, the combat we see right here, it feels inspired by Arkham, which to me is not a knock. Like, it's
that's super good.
Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel.
I think everyone's big concern, though, is the amount of QuickTime events, though.
You can speak a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and the way they explained that was they were like pretty open about the fact that that's what everyone was talking about the next day. It is a open world Spider-Man game. You can swing around, you can do free combat, all of that stuff. The way they described it was they wanted like spectacle moments. They wanted to kind of use QuickTime events as things that punctuate like big blockbuster scenes. And so I think like in missions like this, it does sound like you're going to see a lot of those, almost in the way you do in God of War or anything else.
Uncharted. I think you have
totally.
to accept some degree of it being on rails if you're going to have anything anything approaching that level of spectacle.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's going to be you smashing into the backside of a building on the floor, running a little bit.
I think
With
it's
dramatic
interesting
music playing.
that they chose to have the button cues on screen because it really, I mean, you can get people hyped about a game by stripping out the UI and being like, oh, it's just action, and you don't really think about it. You're like, that is the video game.
But with this, it's like, this is real.
Right,
This is what it's
exactly.
gonna look like,
Now, speaking of God of War and QuickTime events and stripping the UI, God of War is a game we saw demoed last year, and it was this beautiful kind of like slow, sort of somber thing that was, Kratos and his kid walking around, and it has stuff like knowledge gain popping up at the corner. And this time around, we got much more of kind of like a sizzly, like kind of broad strokes, more story-based, a lot more of a look at the kind of moment-to-moment action of God of War. What do you guys take away from this?
I got, like Andrew with Spider-Man, I got to see this behind closed doors and talk to Cory Barlog, and they said that what they wanted to show this year were three things. They wanted to show the journey, they wanted to tell people that the combat's still there, and they wanted to introduce some of the Norse mythology aspects. And so by the journey, they wanted to show that, last year we saw that I think literal single shot, because he still insists this game is a single shot.
That's so cool.
He still insists the camera does not cut
There's
in this
no
video
cut,
game,
yeah.
which I don't understand what that means, but he insisted.
Okay.
Again, and so while last year had that one scene, he wanted to show all the different places you're going to go here. And then when it comes to combat, they showed that we're going to see it soon, but it's very much God of War still. It's still combo based. It's still, you have melee weapons, ranged weapons, magic. Your son is an ally in this, and I don't know. I find that really cool.
What was the demo they showed you?
It was this. It was this with context, and so that was the thing.
So-
is they showed this footage, but he sort of paused it and was talking.
Yeah,
to me
the
about
trailer
it.
jumps around a lot. Was it just showing the footage and then talking?
It was
over it?
literally this footage.
Okay.
So what you're seeing is what I saw, but like right here, he's looking at a vase that is him. So his sort of his
story has become part of mythology.
Yeah, he's
Interesting.
infamous, and what he did in Greece was infamous, and so the people in this
No, it was
North.
God of War. Infamous is the Sucker Punch game.
Stop that! Stop it right now!
I'm happy to announce this is my last episode ever.
Yeah. So I actually really like what they're doing here. If you play the, I think it was in Witcher 2. Maybe it's the Witcher 2 or 3, whichever. They have these flashbacks that are done in these like heavily stylized, sort of very just like sketchy, like folktale looking kind of, not even cutscenes, but like motion graphics, and it kind of helps just really ground the character. And it's like this is legend, this is lore.
Yeah.
I find it really cool that people took the trailer from last year and were looking at it frame by frame, and there were, in the distance, you could see like a huge serpent, or you
Midgard
could
serpent,
see things that represented.
I remember that was like the weeks after E3. People were finding things.
And they found little
Yeah.
bits, and like now that we're seeing stuff like that, now that they're like pulling the camera back just enough that we're getting a little bit of a better idea that stuff is in the game, and confirming that those people were right is really cool.
Yeah. And I think the dynamic of the sun, both in terms of a mechanic, I think is really interesting. Like there's a sun button.
What?
There's a sun button.
What?
I mean, most games have a sun button, but it's like it's sort of
what's the kid's
contextual.
name?
Beatos. Clive? No. Yeah.
Clive?
I don't know if they
Traditional
pronounced
Norse name,
yeah.
Clive.
But you can, like in combat, you can hit the button and they show scenes where he jumps onto an enemy's back and sort of stuns them so that you're able to attack him. He will shoot arrows at an enemy. He'll, stab an enemy. So he's a tool and an asset to you in
Horrible
combat.
thing to say about a young boy.
But also, one thing I find super interesting, Corey pulled this from his own life, is that Kratos doesn't speak the Norse language in this world, but his son does. And so his son has to translate signs, his son has to translate dialogue, and Corey pulled that from his wife is Swedish, and he has a 5-year-old son who's able to speak the language, and Corey doesn't. And so he has to go to his 5-year-old and be like, what does this say? Like, I don't understand what this says. So, Kratos has all the muscles and all the weapons, but he still has to rely on his son to be like, I can't get through this
such a
world.
cool
You have to
idea.
tell me what's happening right now. I
really like that.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we did see this without any like context of UI really. There was that shot where he's like climbing up a ladder of skeletons and like another skeleton jumps out or whatever, and then the kid just stabs it in the eye. My first thought seeing that was like, that totally looks like a QuickTime event.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of going to be an interesting way. We've seen this with the Tomb Raider games where there are parts where you're going through like a bloody tunnel full of skeletons. It's always skeletons.
Yeah,
but
a lot of skeletons.
It's a placeholder for loading screens.
Yeah.
And if they are in fact doing one continuous shot, that's a way you could do it,
Yeah.
especially if there's a serpent in the
I
distance.
feel like at that point he may have just hit the sun button. If you click the sun button when you climb up the skeleton.
That's your answer for everything these days.
Yeah.
But I also loved how this ended, because the Midgar serpent rolls up and you're like, oh, this is gonna be the boss battle that's reminiscent of the Hydra from God of War 1. And like he's like the weird dude from Dark Souls. He's like kind of like the ugly little serpent man.
Yeah, like Frampton.
Yeah, he's like, and then he just throws up your axe and is like, no, we're good.
No, that's what I love. Between this and the guy who Kratos throws the axe at his head,
He's
there's
the merchant in the game. He's one of 2 dwarf twins that you end up upgrading your weapons from.
I like.
cool.
It made me excited that even though that character seems a little like whiny or whatever, like I like that there's still like weird personality-driven characters like that because the game, like God of War, has always been at its best when it's not taking itself super seriously, in my opinion. And so I think like little moments like that, little levity is good.
Yeah, because like last year it seemed like a very somber and serious.
Yeah.
game.
Yes, definitely.
But I think
the levity is good. It's also it seems self-aware, and that's cool. I'm really excited about God of War for probably the first time ever. Speaking of fighting big, huge, giant things, probably the big, huge surprise of Sony's presentation was, of course, Shadow of the Colossus, which is being, I guess, fully remade by Blue Point Games, the guys who've been remastering tons of PS2 classics. It looks incredible. It looks
genuine surprises.
Exactly. Like a lot of times we know things beforehand, and we gotta be mum on this. But this came up, and we just started screaming. It was very unprofessional, but we just started yelling.
It was really weird. There was about 6 hours before the conference, there was a bunch of trademarks that people found, and they literally all ended up being right. It was the Impatient, Shadow of the Colossus, and there was this list. And when Shadow of the Colossus went on there, everyone was like, "Oh, it's going to be like a PS2 on PS4, or like PS2 classic kind of thing." I don't think it ever even entered my mind that we would get to see Shadow of the Colossus looking this good.
I mean, especially after finally we got the Last Guardian at the end of last year, and I don't think anything can live up to a 10-year promise. No. But I think a lot of people who are big fans of the way it does work were sort of underwhelmed by it a little bit. And so I was like, that's closing the chapter on this trilogy. Like, we're done with this. And so seeing this and seeing, I think Shadow of the Colossus is a near perfect game, and the only things I could fault it for are some technical things. And so if this fixes frame rate and controls and camera, then like, holy crap.
It's a really tricky thing though, like it's a weird thing that you have in games, like remastering a classic. And, like in movies, we kind of resent this, whereas this, we're super hyped about it.
Yeah. Well, there's no mechanics in movies. Unless it's about like car people.
But it's like, as a developer, like what extent are they changing stuff to make it look like that? And then you're losing what essence of the original game in that process.
I think it's fantastic. I'm very curious to see, like, obviously Blue Point, they're kind of seen as like as a remaster house. Are they going to be pulling any help from Team Ico at all? There's no mention of Team Ico attached at all.
I mean, Studio Japan is mentioned in the trailer, so I would guess that like whatever members of Team Ico have kind of been absorbed into Sony, maybe. I mean, I'm unclear on that too. I don't even know if Ueda would be involved in this.
I doubt it because he's not at Sony anymore. Like he formed his own studio and he contracted to the end of.
Maybe that's what they need is there's somebody had the original creative vision, and then you take people who understand what works and what doesn't, and they're not like the creators basically. It's sometimes the cover is better than the original song.
Yeah, that's totally true.
On that note, we're going to take a quick break, really quick. Beyond at E3 will be back right after this. Weird voice.
IGN Live at E3 2017 is presented by Omen by HP and Atomic Blonde in theaters July 28th.
Someone set me up. Someone from the inside. MI6, CIA, everyone's involved. Now, this only ends one way.
Welcome back to IGN Live at E3, and this is a very special big budget edition of Beyond. AAA remaster of a real classic that we do every week. All right, guys, let's talk really quickly about some of the other stuff from Sony's conference. The next kind of big game coming out is, of course, Uncharted Lost Legacy. Who wants to talk about that?
I got to see it behind closed doors. I'm super excited for this game. I think I loved Uncharted 4. My only problem with it was I felt it was a little long in the tooth. I feel like a lot of the beats went on just a little too much, and so the idea of tightening this up into a shorter Uncharted game sounds amazing. I think the dynamic between Chloe and Nadine is going to be awesome. I saw the scene in the demo where you're playing as Chloe, you're hiding in the bush, and Nadine's behind you, and there's two guards, and she's like, all right, I'll take the guy on the left, you take the guy on the right on 3. 1, 2, and Nadine just runs out, chokes one guy, and kicks the other guy, and Chloe's like, all right, well, I guess we can do that as
I
well.
love that.
And I think that's great. Like, I want that playful dynamic. I'm super stoked for this game. I think calling this an expansion or DLC, I think, is undermining what this actual thing is. Like, this is the next Uncharted game.
Yeah, I don't think they're even calling it like that. They're
it's a
just the
standalone.
fact that it happens to be in that engine.
I'm stoked.
And not having a number on there kind of helps attract maybe new people to the franchise. We saw that demo at PSX that was all very like one shot, and it was just Chloe like creeping through in a hood and lock picking, and it didn't look like Uncharted. It didn't look like big, grand Temple of Doom stuff.
Yeah.
But then we got a trailer that showed off some of that.
Yeah. And the demo I saw 100%. It was you were in the jungle, you got into this firefight, and trees were falling, and everything was crumbling, and then you ended up in this spooky tomb, and a truck went through a wall. The truck was kind of like Jason Voorhees. It just kept appearing, which I was kind of fine with.
Dude, trucks are the main enemy in Uncharted. There's always a truck.
Yeah, there's always a girl, a lighthouse, and a truck.
Yeah, real weird. Now, speaking of not really anything, I guess, Days Gone, which is like it has motorcycles in it, which are like half a truck.
Yeah. I saw the Days Gone
last year, didn't you?
I saw Days Gone last year. I haven't seen this one yet. I think you just saw it.
Yeah.
But from the conference demo, like, this is a little bit more of what I wanted last year. It's not fully there yet for me. Like, and I'm excited. I'm seeing it behind closed doors too. Like, this demo gave me a little bit more of Deacon, made me understand him as a character a little bit more, which I think is what that game needs. Because, like, visually, I think this game looks great. I think the stuff with the Horde is a pretty interesting take on zombies, like that they operate as like one cohesive unit that's kind of terrifying just by strength and numbers. But I still have to care about the characters and what's happening to actually be invested in this. And like, they've got me like 25% closer to caring, but I'm still a little bit just hesitant to be like, oh, like this is PlayStation's next great hero.
I think that's really key because there's so much zombie fiction in the world, and it's kind of a reality where characters are so expendable. If you don't care about them, it's very, very samey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that being said, like, I think the way they use the swarm as sort of a tool, where you're like, all right, I'm going to open this door so that they come and take out the humans, and so I can proceed. Like, I find that interesting.
Essentially, it's Pikmin.
Yeah, right. This is absolutely Pikmin.
It's zombie Pikmin.
I like that. I think that they're doing a very similar thing to what Horizon did. If you look at Horizon, it's like this wonderful kind of like mixtape of great mechanics from other games, all executed really, really well. But if you jump into that, you understand what's going on there, and I don't think derivative is at all an applicable term, but it's iterative. It's taking familiar themes and mechanics and doing stuff with them. And I think we're seeing very much the same thing here with Days Gone. I think their key thing they're doing is using enemies as a weapon. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like if you dig down to it, the same way Horizon was like the really big thing was the monster fights. But in this case, we've done stuff like in Far Cry games, you can be like, oh, I let the leopard out, and the leopard goes around and kills people. But that's like one animal. In this case, it's a whole swarm, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, zombie bear.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean the setting completely doesn't interest me. But a lot of people love.
I love it.
Walking
Pacific
Dead.
Northwest.
The Pacific Northwest is fine. I mean the post-apocalyptic Pacific Northwest starring a biker with cut-off sleeves.
Apocalyptic Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Well done.
Keep saying that. Now another game, completely shifting gears. A different future is of course Detroit Become Human, which is the latest from Quantic Dream.
Yeah, and David Cage. Yeah, like I think we started this game a few years ago when we had that teaser trailer. Well, it's concept trailer, Kara, which was I thought was fascinating when we first saw that. This kind of deeper dive in the conference almost got me less excited because it looks a bit less distinct and interesting. It's kind of this robot rebellion.
But what's cool about it is like they're doing so like we're seeing footage right now from last year's demo, which is the kind of hostage negotiation situation, and you have these three paths. Kara from that tech demo is one of them. This guy's the other, and then the one they introduced in the press conference this year is Marcus, which is the he's played by Jesse Williams, so he's on the Grey's Anatomy and stuff. I find that
thanks, Andrew.
Super. You're welcome. I find that little like uprising element of it really interesting if it's only a third, because part of it. I think like if they're kind of telling the story of the extreme of one side that is super like anti-human, the extreme of the other side of trying to blend in and just not wanting to like upset the balance, and then a guy in the middle who almost operates a literal liaison between the two. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and I actually got to go hands-on with this demo that we're seeing now from last year, yesterday, and I really liked it.
Yeah.
I liked the sort of choose-your-own-adventure approach, and the more you explore before you have the encounter, this hostage situation, the more you explore, the more information you have in your choices, voices. So I explored the house a little bit, and I learned that this android's name is Daniel, so that when I got out there, I could say Daniel, and it sort of calmed him down a little bit. I'm sorry, I keep saying Daniel and looking at you.
I feel calmed down.
But it literally, because I played that demo last year, and it like lowers the probability of a bad outcome when you do that. And it's literally displayed on screen.
And does it play like similar to Quantic Dream's other games?
Yeah, it feels better than Beyond Two Souls, because when you were a ghost in that game,
but it has like cool,
you were just like a camera flying around. Like.
It has touchpad stuff too, where like you're rewinding and fast forwarding, like to figure out
so
what happened.
If you sort of think of like Arkham VR, where you're rewinding a crime scene and trying to find a specific angle to see a thing, it kind of has that. I don't know. I'm super intrigued by this.
So my big concern with this, and I love kind of the, what do we call it, interactive narrative kind of thing. Heavy Rain is awesome, and it's so cool that it's got all those different endings and stuff, but I sort of wish in a way that it was 2 hours long, because I'll rewatch a movie infinitely if it's really cool, and if it's got a whole bunch of different endings and outcomes, that's awesome. But the fact that I don't necessarily want to play through like a full campaign to get, like, I love the idea, and this is all about the very dense, like, minuscule decisions and rewinding them, and like it's just that kind of like that buyer's remorse of decision making.
Yeah. I mean, they've also said like all three of the characters can die at any point. And I'm like, can I make this like a half an hour game?
Yeah.
Can I quickly? I'm like, you're going off the roof. You're going off the roof. You're in the pool. Done.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you get that with the choose your own adventure thing. Now, next up, Kingdom Hearts 3. We got a brand new trailer for that was delivered. So we keep being like, they just dropped it in the middle of the night. It's like, no, they showed it during a symphony prepresentation.
Yeah, which was sort of surprising. Like, I don't know what's happening here. This is
Jonathan Dornbush.
I mean, he's the one who's most excited, so he deserves to be on here. They dropped the trailer a couple nights ago, and it showcased a couple things. Like, the game looks gorgeous. I mean, we haven't had a proper console Kingdom Hearts for 12 years, 2005.
And the motion in this is like insane. Like, it's just like watching it. It's built in Unreal. Like, watching the physics of it, as stupid as it sounds, just like the movement looks so cool and different. Because I remember playing that game on PS2 and just thinking at the time that it was so pretty, and people have been playing The Office recently, and I look, and it's not quite there.
No.
And like, even compared to the PS4 remasters, I think this looks distinctly different.
And they give us a morsel of the story with Maleficent and Pete going to Hades. I mean, like, you have the black box, and I'm like, ooh, what are these black boxes?
And this is kind of a teaser for something they're showing at D23.
Yeah.
So second week of July, they're going to reveal a new world and give us some context for, I guess, what we saw here.
You tried to give me a scoop on what the world was. When they said the black box, you thought of airplanes, and you thought of Lost, which was an ABC show owned by Disney.
We're not going to talk about Lost and Kingdom Hearts, Marty. I'm sorry. We have to move on.
It's been such a long E3 week, I forgot I made that joke.
Do you really want it to be Grey's Anatomy?
Yeah, starring Jesse.
Okay, all right.
Sorry,
Rein it in, fellas. One thing we saw that was a big surprise reveal was Monster Hunter World, which is Monster Hunter coming to PS4.
Yeah. And it's coming to Xbox One as well. Like, it was a bit unclear what it was, and you didn't really see him fighting the monster at all.
He ran away a lot.
Yeah, he's like the monster runner.
And I think it was important to say, like, people who are not familiar with that franchise, it has a sense of humor. So when he's putting the ghillie suit on and it looks silly, like, that is part of Monster Hunter's appeal for those fans. I think if you don't play Monster Hunter, you go, that was ridiculous.
No, I think it's the same thing as like Metal Gear, where you get rid of your box and it goes, where'd the box go? This is interesting though, because I have to say this wasn't a great demo. Like,
No,
I don't think anybody's really. I think people who don't know Monster Hunter are like, okay, what am I looking at? And people who do know Monster Hunter are like, okay, what did they do to Monster Hunter? Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing is they didn't show him fight, and they didn't show multiplayer. And the Monster Hunter series is great. It has an amazing pedigree, and I think in Japan this game's going to blow up, but it just wasn't a good showing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, so Monster Hunter Frontier Z, I believe, was on PS4 in Japan. So it's not like there is some kind of console install base, but these games are at their best, or sell at their best at least, on portable. And like, that's what I think of now. Last gen PSP, now more 3DS. I'm curious to see, especially in the West, what that looks like in terms of console.
Yeah, it's like this like sleeping giant of a game in the West that's never really taken off in the way that Capcom want to.
Yes, exactly.
And I feel like going on PS4, announcing at Sony's conference is like them making a big signal of 10. Like, we're going to try again.
Yeah.
And hopefully it works out for you.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for the best, but I think as far as demos go, to show something that's clearly trying to be indicative of gameplay, but then is like, to be like, oh, here's a game being played, and then to have just jump cuts interspersed throughout it.
That was the weirdest part.
That was a
like
bad
fade
call.
into something else. Yeah.
Maybe
because you could just have a demo which is an extended hunt. Beginning to end.
have a shorter demo. Or
I saw Capcom's logo, and I thought we were getting deep down.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to get deep down.
Getting deep down.
I don't know if that'll have.
I was also a little bit disappointed because a lot of us were hoping From was going to be at the show, either Bloodborne 2 or a new IP, and this was a character with a big weapon fighting a big monster. But I was like, that's not Bloodborne 2.
I mean, I'd love to be pleasantly surprised and just totally grabbed by. I mean, we've seen a lot of Japanese franchises kind of like take modern mechanic or Western mechanics that are kind of we think of as like modern mechanics and throwing them into like existing stuff. And I mean, like we got an open world Final Fantasy game with like action elements, which some people didn't like, but I don't know, it hooked me. So if Monster Hunter does the same thing, that could be really interesting. It's got grappling hooks. It's got like pterodactyls with sinus infections. So
I felt bad for that, man.
Then of course, speaking of just Western stuff, Call of Duty, World War II.
That Western Front.
There we go. I get it.
World War II, kids.
Marty, you've got a chance to sort of like pay attention to this.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. Like, I'm not a big multiplayer guy, but the idea of this series finally going back to World War II after 9 years. World at War was the last game. That was last gen. So the idea of sort of bringing, this war video games, in my mind, I always envision the D-Day. I always envision, storming the beaches at Normandy. And the idea that we haven't done that in a very long time. And the way technology is advanced, like, I'm totally down to do this again. And the way they're talking about, they don't want us to play as a superhero, which I think is super cool. Like, they're like, we don't want you double jumping, we don't want you ground pounding, like there's no air dashes, like you are a kid who had a gun thrust in his hand.
Forced to go do something horrible.
Yeah, and instead of like, there's no power slide button, the slide button is you dive into the sand and cover your head. And there's no health regen, there's med packs.
Yeah,
like,
also I was surprised at how gory it is. I mean, we've seen Call of Duty, it's always been an M-rated franchise, but there were moments, and I think World at War had like guts and stuff, legs getting blown off, and we got some of that in this sizzle reel they showed at E3. And I'm like, I'm not, I'm 30, so I'm not quite at that stage in my life where I'm like, yeah, they got legs getting blown off. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, well, that's a change of pace.
Wait, you're not at that stage in your life? Like, was that earlier or later?
I'm not like,
come. Yeah, 60.
Yeah, I'll be 80 years old. I'll be like, physical blood violence, Soldier of Fortune 3. So one thing we also got to look at was Destiny 2.
Yeah, and they pulled the release date back 2 days, which is probably the first time I've ever seen that happen.
Dustin asked them that on the live show. Like, what's the deal with that? They're like, it's just gonna be ready.
That's very odd.
Was it not going to be otherwise?
But yeah, so there's of course, if you're fascinated by Destiny, there's an entire IGN show called Fire Team Chat about that, full of hardcore fans who have also done a cool show here.
So much more than we do.
And Dave,
way higher light levels.
We just please don't be mad at us. On that note, we're gonna take a very quick break. IGN Live at E3 will be back right after this, so don't go anywhere.
IGN Live at E3 2017 is presented by Atomic Blonde, in theaters July 28th, and Omen by HP.
Someone set me up. Someone from the inside. MI6, CIA, everyone's involved. Now, Sony ends one way.
You, down here, come here. Come on, let's go. Come on. All right. Welcome back to IGN Live at E3, and a very special edition of Beyond. Okay, so we talked about all the stuff that was at Sony's press event, and of course, at E3. Let's talk about what wasn't. Lots of stuff, really, just pretty much an infinite amount of things. But specifically, we didn't get anything about Dreams.
Why? Just tell us something.
You predicted it wouldn't be there. You did this.
Because they keep, look, they have promised. There was supposed to be a beta, I believe, last year of Dreams that didn't happen. So we're now pretty far removed. This is a game that can't function the way it's meant to unless it is populated with years of user content before it's out. So the plan, as I understood it in 2015, was that we were just going to get this rolling series of betas where people would be able to create stuff and that would influence the game. none of that's happened. So I mean, like,
Do you think maybe they're having playtesters do that kind of stuff?
Maybe.
And signing very heavy NDAs?
I mean, I think like that's kind of what I'm wondering. And they're doing these weekly streams. It's not like they've been silent. The day before the show, they tweeted out, "Hey, we won't be at E3." Like they haven't been. It's not like they've been completely cut off the way like The Last Guardian was back in the day or something. But they have to be planning something for this game.
Yeah.
And I think your E3 prediction specifically didn't end up being right, but I think when we see this again, it will be like a available now situation.
Yeah.
And there's also like several other events. There's so many events, as we all know, throughout the year for them to like show this off.
Gamescom, PSX.
Gamescom, or if they do like one year, like Sony went to Paris Games Week.
Yeah.
And they might just think the tone of this game, it's better not to show it on an E3 stage alongside God of War and Spider-Man, which are very bombastic. Suddenly you have to slow the pace right down and do that.
Yeah, I really hope this game still exists and that this isn't like, I mean, we made a joke about Deep Down. I really hope this game isn't just a thing that a couple years from now we're like, remember Dreams?
Yeah, most importantly, I hope this game isn't the thing that sinks me in a molecule.
Yeah.
Like I love their creativity. I love what they bring to kind of this whole ecosystem, and I think it would just really be a shame if this project ended up being a resource drain.
Yeah. I mean, you're IGN's sack boy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a horrible thing to say. Another thing we didn't see was anything from Sucker Punch. They've been pretty much silent since the last Infamous game, and
lots of rumors about new IP from them. I want them to do that. I don't want them to do. I don't think we need another Infamous, honestly. I especially don't think we need it with existing Infamous characters. So it would just be nice for them to go in a different direction.
I think it's a pretty safe bet we'll see some tease from them next year, and then if Sony's kind of got this pattern to conferences down at E3,
or possibly even PSX. Like,
maybe.
You know, we saw big games get announced in the last couple of PSXs. PSX.
Do you think that
Stop saying it.
Do you think that Sony's basically because they are doing so well? We just heard that there's, I think, 60 million PlayStation 4s in people's homes because they're leading the console wars. Like, are they just like, okay, third party will carry us. Let's like give our first party stuff breathing room.
I mean, they are, and it's funny because with something like Infamous as a great example, it never sold that well. And then when PS4 started, Second Son actually sold remarkably well for that franchise because suddenly there was more attention on it. And so I think at this point, like, they don't need to rush into first party games because when they come, they tend to all do well. Like Horizon did really well.
Uncharted,
Uncharted, So I think like these big, fun, actiony blockbuster games, like, kind of don't have anything to worry about.
Then of course we didn't get anything for Bloodborne 2.
I don't want Bloodborne 2.
That being said, you need to prepare to try.
Because I don't want to have to do that again. But if I'm a big hypocrite on this. If you made it,
You'd devour it.
My most anticipated game. But if you look at what's happened to the Dark Souls series, I think it's a good example of subtracting by adding. Like story-wise, at least, which is the thing I like most about those games. Because after 3, the original story is a bit of a mess. Like, it's not good ambiguity. I think they've convoluted it, and I think Bloodborne just stands alone so brilliantly that I don't really need a sequel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of in the same boat where I want them to keep making games in this vein, but I don't need Bloodborne 2. Like, I want them to do a new IP. Like, even we always joke about something like doing something sci-fi, or like they are the developers of Armored Core. So like, how could the Souls heart exist in a mech game?
Yeah, Miyazaki said that they're developing 3 games. And one is something very surprising that you wouldn't expect from that studio.
Dark Souls 4.
Dark Blood. But yeah, like I just want to see that at some point. I want to see them do different things. Because we see so many other studios trying to do their thing now.
Oh yeah, they've become a genre.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that you don't want another one, and I totally get that. Same with me with Last of Us 2. I had a very mean Instagram comment saying, "Did Neil Druckmann hurt you? Why would you not want that?" Only phrased much worse. And like the reality is, like, I think that's such a wonderful game on its own. Why gild the lily? Why overdo it? But we didn't see any Last of Us 2. We know that's in the works.
I sort of agree with you where I think Last of Us has one of the best endings in a game ever. And you talked about ambiguity with Dark Souls, and that's the ending of that game. I'm like, this is perfect. But then they got on stage at PSX and like, we're doing it again. And he has said, trust us, we wouldn't do this unless we knew what we were doing.
Yeah, and I guess they have the freedom to do whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing, they wouldn't, like, the fact that it's the same creative team, it's not like this is like a cash grab. This is like
another studio. We'd love
totally.
another one of those Last of Us.
This isn't like a Batman Arkham Origins version of Last of Us. Like, this is like, they want to tell this story, and that is enough for me. Like, that gives me faith.
That said, like, I think I mentioned on our post show, I find it weird that they revealed this at PSX and didn't wait until E3.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we would have saw the PSX trailer during E3, I think we would have left the conference with like, holy crap, all right, this was our Death Stranding or Spider-Man, where it was like a short tease at something that's a couple years out.
Well, speaking of Death Stranding, we also didn't get a look at that. However, there's lots of Death Stranding merchandise for sale on the show floor.
And there's a low roar concert.
Really?
The song.
Oh man, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And Kojima's in town hanging out with Neil Blomkamp having breakfast.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and you could buy like a Ludens statue. He's got his weird web shirt.
Yeah, there's like
what's going
new
on there.
T-shirts. I don't want to sound like I'm mocking the merch because I already have that vinyl. I pre-ordered it when it was coming out. It's really cool, but yeah, it's kind of weird that Kojima's like leaning into this. You know? I mean, yeah, I guess we also have we have action figures of the Final Fantasy VII remake announced. So sometimes that's how it works. Games are super expensive to develop, and maybe you have to sort of, bands don't get the most from concert tickets; they get it from the merch.
It almost feels like they're establishing a cult around this game, like before we've even seen it.
Before we know what genre of video game this is. We're huge Metal Gear fans. Like I'm with Death Stranding. I'm like, I don't think this is a PS4 game. I'm fine with that. Take all the time you want. I think we'll get this in 2020 with Cyberpunk and with Beyond Good and Evil, and I'm kind of fine with that.
Yeah. What about Final Fantasy VII Remake?
This is one of those, obviously, I would expect this TGS at this point. I think that's probably going to be the next time we see something. And I think what they need, and you were actually when you said this, Max, I think they need to do their episode Duskai. I think to prove that this exists, just let us run around in Midgar. Just give us one tiny section of the game.
Give us Midgar.
Yeah, exactly.
That wasn't that long in the original game. Just
totally.
Give us Midgar.
And that would be great if it was just a couple hours of understanding the mechanics, the battle system. I think they need a proof of concept right now because this is starting to feel like vaporware. And I think in a year where Shadow of the Colossus gets revealed, it's are we also not going to see this for 5 more years?
Yeah.
It's a little strange, especially since they said this is divided into 3 parts. And we don't even have a date for part 1, let alone part 2 or 3.
Hey man, that's fine.
You don't need a date, you're fine.
Yeah. It sucks that we have to wait so long to play games that they already made. Anyway, Beyond Good and Evil 2, that was one of the big surprises of the show. Ubisoft revealed that in a beautiful CG. There's a part of me that's like, oh, cool, they made a CG trailer. That's super exciting. But honestly, it looks really, really cool. I'm totally on board. Cool. I don't know what the hell it is, but what do we know about this?
I'm hesitant to say anything because literally in an hour I'm going to talk to Michelle and Ansel about this. So
ask him what it is.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
He's referred to it as GTA in space. And it's got swearing animals.
And it has a lot of personality like the first game did. From what we've heard, they spent a lot of the time that it's been quiet just building the tech.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they basically spent this entire time making sure the tech was ready so they can begin development on the game, which it does sound, from what little bits and pieces are coming out from interviews and stuff, it almost sounds like more of a Destiny style, like a...
That's my biggest worry though. And as cool as it would be to run around with friends and be swearing animals in space, I kind of just want I want this universe with story.
Yeah.
Well, I thought when they announced it, Michelle Ansel came on stage, they also brought out the narrative designer. So I don't know. Hopefully that may allay some of those fears.
Yeah, I feel like by bringing her out, it was this is a game with a story.
Yeah.
Don't worry about this. I find it weird that they call it Beyond Good and Evil 2, but it's a prequel, and it's been long enough to where you can just kind of call it Beyond Good and Evil. Call it 2. I'm just curious to see, because Beyond Good and Evil, the original, was really ahead of its time with a lot of the mechanics in terms of photography, its combat. It's stuff that's in almost every game now, but back in 2003 or 4 or whenever it came out, wasn't that commonplace.
But he's also was working on that other game, Wild.
Yeah, where's Wild?
Now he switched back to this. What about the other game?
Yeah. Where's that giant naked snake woman?
You should basically say you can't start that until you do this one.
It's like you can't have dessert until you finish dinner.
If you don't eat meat, you won't get any pudding.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the weird boat is that there have been 2 fantastic Rayman games over the last few years. It's not like Michelle Ansel hasn't been doing anything, but I think either Wild or Beyond Good and Evil 2 needs to just come out.
I feel like when this is just going into the final crunch, he's going to be like, I'm going to get some coffee. And he comes back, guys, I have a great idea for a new Rayman game. And I was like, oh!
Michelle.
Yeah, so speaking of Destiny likes, the big reveal from EA that everyone was like, what? Was what BioWare's working on, which is Anthem, which... it looks really, really cool. Looks really cool. But so did Destiny, so did No Man's Sky, so did basically everything Ubisoft showed for the last 4 years. And I'm pretty much just kind of Emperor's New Clothes at this point. I don't know what to make of it.
The part with the jetpack, you look like Iron Man. That was cool.
Yeah, that's the thing. It literally did look like you were flying around like Iron Man. And that was... mean, it looks like a smart version of Destiny. It looks like basically a little bit of a smart iteration on that formula. Whereas I know Destiny 2 left a couple people wondering, like, well, what is so different? Like, it got a lot of the mean Destiny 1.5 comments or whatever. If this is doing something dramatically different, that's huge, and EA could cut into that market.
Right. Well, we got to look in the trailer. There's all these dynamic weather systems and like crazy storms going on, and in addition to the fact that it's also third person, and you're moving around this huge environment. It's like proper open world, presumably. That could get really exciting, but at the same time, if it's more like kind of go on a side quest thing with your friends, and also I don't know. It's a hype piece. Like I wanna be excited about it. I wanna like it, but at the same time, it's fool me once. Yep.
Yeah. That being said, this looks really cool. And then it goes underwater.
The underwater thing that's a good reveal. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Also, like these are just like that animal he fights up ahead is just straight up a rancor.
Yeah.
Which is okay. That's fine.
We've gotten 40 minutes into this episode without you talking about Star Wars.
Oops, my bad. Now, totally on the other end of the spectrum in terms of just budget and tone and everything, is A Way Out, which is an EA game, which is from Joseph Fares, who did Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and this is a mandatory co-op game about prison break. What do you guys make of it?
Is it local co-op as well?
It's local co-op.
I think that's brilliant. Like, we were talking about like Destiny and these online experiences. There's someone is making that type of game that's forcing you to play it in that way because they know they can control like what's happening in your living room.
Yeah, and so much of it is, Joseph said, it's about the discussion between the two players. Like we saw a scene where it's after they break out of prison and they roll up to a gas station. They have to rob it because they don't have money. And they're in the car and they have one gun. And they're like, all right, which one of us is going to take the gun? And the players have to come to a consensus on which of the two of you are going to have the gun, which will change your verbs during the robbery. And I find that really cool. Like, if the game is a series of choices like this, where I sit next to a person on a couch and we're like, I don't want the gun. You take it. Like, I want to do other things. Like, I want to take a pacifist.
I mean, I love that he's sort of, in a really smart way, with Brothers and now with this, is just rethinking what co-op is and what an experience is. Like, because Brothers is a co-op game that you play by yourself. Like, it's like a really interesting mechanic. And this seems so smart. Like, little things like if one player's in a cutscene, the other one can still control. And
they're like, they can appear in the background like a weird extra who walked out of place.
Exactly.
I love how, it's how many games have we gotten where it's just sort of standard that, it's co-op. Both people get guns, of course. Now they're like, sorry, no, there's one gun. You got to fight over it. You and your brother are going to be punching each other on the couch. Like,
seems super cool.
Also, I love that this guy he's a film director. He's on like top 10 lists of like rising stars in the movie industry, and then he's just like, no, I'm going to make games. And I think having an outsider's perspective with the same sort of vision is really cool. And I think he proved himself with Brothers. So
it's also one of those things where there's so many movies that so often it's like, oh, like this is like a video game version of Die Hard. This is a video game version of The Raid or whatever it is. Like Shawshank Redemption is such a fascinating thing. If you're going to feel even remotely inspired by something, that's a world I'm fascinated by.
The late 60s, early 70s just aren't like dealt with in games a lot.
Totally.
It's a nice change of pace. Another period of history that isn't dealt with quite as much is, of course, the prequels of Star Wars, which is where Battlefront 2 is doing. And I've talked about Battlefront 2 a bit this year. Little tiny bit, sort of, kind of.
I love that trailer so much. The very beginning of it, when it's fading in and out of the different eras of Stormtroopers, is so cool.
Yeah, it's a cool trailer. It makes the prequels seem so cool, which is so weird. I don't know how you did that, but like running around Theed as a battle droid, it was super exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's weird that like visuals from the prequels are effectively getting a HD remaster with this.
Yeah, totally.
I also love that we've got this this heavy sort of like dice, like this is a shooter, this is gritty, but then you've got like Roger.
And I got to play a couple rounds. I think the class system's super smart. I love battle points, and now that you have to earn the ability to play as Rey or Darth Maul and not just randomly pick up a token on the battlefield.
It's so much better. The card system was messy, I think.
It seems like they were. I think they bit off exactly as much as they could chew. With the first game, they made something that was balanced and grounded, just pretty simple. It was kind of remedial, and they were trying to hit that sweet spot of lining up with the Force Awakens release. And this time, they've got a little more wiggle room. And the fact that they're not parceling out the DLC as part of a like season pass is awesome because that won't split up the
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, the content seasons idea is really smart, especially starting with The Last Jedi. Like,
Yeah. And then we got to see behind closed doors one of the first single player mission, which I thought was super cool. Full disclosure, I think I've kissed the writer.
Yeah, probably.
Mitch and I've kissed at some point. So.
I think it was like PAX Prime 2014. There's a lot of kissing there. It was weird.
But the thing I took from this, so we got to see a little bit in depth of what that was, which was really scary. It's like the Royal Imperial Guard with a face that showed a message from Palpatine, sort of in case I die, play this message. But it was also sort of wispy, like a Dementor. Like it was actually kind of scary. And then the mission itself it was weird to play a game where you play as this character who's gunning down members of the rebellion, and so you're gunning down these troops that look like the good guys. And what's the neonum? I always have to look at you.
Celestian.
Thanks you. I killed several. Yeah, I killed. It sounds like me.
That's why I like them so much.
I killed several Celestians. I was like, ooh, I feel uncomfortable. In a good way.
Well, I've been playing hours and hours with the first one, and I don't kill those guys either because you have to grind a lot to get those heads, and they're better than me. Yeah. Another game about shooting stuff that maybe is too familiar is Far Cry 5, which of course has you in Hope County, Montana, and you're fighting like crazy militant cult members.
Yeah.
Marty, you've been kind of focusing on this one a lot.
Yeah, I am so on board for this.
Yeah.
I think, at first you're like, it's coming to Montana? Like, how is this going to work? Because especially the series, it went from Africa to the islands.
More exotic, but I guess that's a relative term.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, for you, is it? What do you
I was going to ask.
Farms aren't that exotic. We have farms, Andrew. I don't know if we have one of those.
I don't even know what that is.
That's a cow, everybody.
Yeah, definitely don't have that.
That's our pastime.
But I think the setting's really cool, and I think the trailer and some of the gameplay so at Ubisoft, like it marshals that kind of really kind of creepy, sinister tone, but then it just goes nuts.
Yeah.
When the dog runs in and this guy's like overhead in a plane, like it is eccentric still.
Yeah, and that's the guns for hire system, which is the way they've gotten rid of outposts, but there's still these areas you have to clear. And so the demo we showcased live yesterday, it showed this small stretch, but you could choose which companion you had. And there was Boomer, who's 2017's best boy. He's a very nice dog. There's a pet button, comes up, licks you on the face, gave him a show. But his ability is you can send him into town, and he will passively target every single enemy. And so he'll come back, and all of a sudden, every enemy is targeted. And then you can be like, all right, get that guy's gun, and he'll bite the guy's gun and bring it back.
That sounds like a game that I played called Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain.
Oh, no. This is way different, though. Then another one of them is a sniper, and you can put her up into the water tower, and she'll protect you with sniper fire.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's also, I love that we're getting to this point where games are just sort of like, they're always been like this, borrowing each other's mechanics and stuff. And Metal Gear Solid 5 borrowed so heavily from Far Cry. Yeah. And now we've got this, and this is what I was hoping. I'm like, the tone is cool, it's interesting. Yeah. I'm not super in love with it, but hearing that they've shaken up the mechanics and they've gotten rid of outposts, like that sounds cool.
And there's no towers anymore. You don't have to climb to the top of a tower and all of a sudden you get your icons. It's all sort of diegetic. You will pass a sign that says deer crossing, and on your map it'll be like, all right, there's probably deer around here.
And the full thing's co-op as well.
Full thing is two-player co-op, the entire story.
That's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I want to dig more into the meat and potatoes of the story soon. Yeah.
Yes, a lot of meat and potatoes though. It's in the heartland.
Yeah, they'd love that.
Anyway, we got to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about Assassin's Creed Origins. So stick around. We'll be right back.
IGN Live at E3 2017 is presented by Omen by HP and Atomic Blonde in theaters July 28th.
Someone set me up. Someone from the inside. MI6. CIA. Everyone's involved. Now, Sony ends one way.
And welcome back to IGN Live at E3 in a very special edition of Beyond. Now, Assassin's Creed is sort of, for a while it was this thing that you saw every year at E3, but then suddenly Actually, that's not even true. They did the Ezio collection last year. So we see Assassin's Creed every year, but this is the first time they've basically been like, hey, we're taking a break for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then we got Assassin's Creed Origins. What do you guys make of this?
I got to play it. I love this, actually. It's by the Black Flag team, which was one of the most fun and different Assassin's Creed games in recent memory. And taking a year off, I think, allows the series to breathe a little bit, sort of regain its footing. And I loved what I played.
I think they need to spend a lot of time communicating all the stuff they've done in that extra year. So when you saw the extended demo in the Microsoft conference, like I think a lot of people just go, "Oh, it looks like Assassin's." Like it's gonna be a guy in a robe running around stabbing people and jumping off stuff. And the thing that what they need to talk about is like how the mission structure is totally different because you can play missions in any order. They're not repetitive missions, and how the combat is like significantly different from the original.
It's so crazy because I think a lot of people were very fatigued and skipped Syndicate, and Syndicate might be my favorite in the franchise.
It's great.
It's really good.
Yeah, the
So
characters
it's
are
like
wonderful.
a lot of mechanics were already refined there, and I would imagine that in the 2 years since, it's only gotten better.
Yeah, I think it's less mechanical changes and more like you said, Dan.
structural changes.
Structural changes.
Yeah.
They said they want to go to this open quest-based system that almost sounds like a Bethesda game. It's like very like open world, do what you want in any order, and also they're leaning heavily into RPG elements. So between stats, between a ton of armor and loot that have different rarities and different elemental properties, a giant skill tree.
The combat seems significantly different. You know, it's not kind of the kind of Arkham Knight style that you got in Syndicate, but it is about managing distance, hitboxes, parrying. You know, that's a big change.
Even seeing that boss battle.
Yeah,
is
they said
like,
they want bosses.
It seems like a Dark Souls or Bloodborne fight.
and
in
at
some
the end,
ways.
I think we saw like a weird little basilisk pop up.
And I think like we use that term a lot, going, "Oh, the combat's a bit Dark Souls," and it's not the same. Like, what I think people mean by that is like it's a bit more analog. It's not just hitting a button and you're doing a counter. You're thinking about when to manage your attacks, when to like back off.
Yeah. Also, the game's gonna have mummies.
Yeah, lots of mummies. Mummies are great.
Mummies.
No, I asked about this. It's got tons of animals too.
Yeah.
It sounds like I don't know. Mummies and animals are some of my favorite things. But no, like I think they've been taking their time with this, and clearly they put a lot of time into the visuals and everything. But it's also, I think, for all intents and purposes, it's kind of a reboot. Like, and this is
and it's going back to the beginning.
Yeah, and like that series has supernatural elements in it. I want them to have more of that. It's almost like going back so far into history. They're kind of a bit more unshackled in what they do.
Yeah.
Has there been any talk of modern day stuff at all?
No.
I asked about it, and I got one of those just non-committal answers. They're like, "Well,
They just walked off stage.
talk about that later." And
Yeah, but you
all
mentioned
right.
animals in my. I played the game for like 45 minutes, and I saw a camel, I saw a hippo. I went into an enemy encampment, and there was a lion in a cage, and I opened the cage, and the lion ate everybody. I'm like, this is great.
So
Well, wonderful.
yeah, they're just dumping Far Cry stuff in there. I'm totally down with that. If this is like Witcher-like quests and Far Cry combat and
you have a bird companion, like
mummies.
Oh, there's gonna be so many mummies in this game. You don't even know.
I mean, it seems like they're having fun with it and doing some new stuff. I'm so happy they took a break too, because like for so long it felt like Ubisoft had this house that had like a foundation that needed repair, and they were like, yeah, but what if we just put up new wallpaper and rearrange the furniture? And you're like, maybe work on maybe the basement flooded a tiny bit.
But the only problem with the mummies, I think this is the biggest important question. They won't yet be mummies, will they? When you get mummified, how long does that take?
I mean, aren't you immediately a mummy? Yeah, once you get the toilet paper around.
Maybe like really
become a mummy.
fresh mummies.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still a little bit wet.
I don't know. You reviewed them. You know what's going on.
Anyway, another thing we got to take a look at was at Bethesda's show. They showed off Wolfenstein II, which looks like a lot of fun. It looks like
such a good trailer, dude.
It looks like
so
really
good.
kind of like funny, like in like a really warped way.
Yeah.
Which of you guys are you guys Wolfenstein guys?
I'm fascinated by this world because I'm not a Wolfenstein guy, honestly. And like Machine Games, their most recent one, New Order, was the first time I'd ever really spent time with the Wolfenstein game, and I ended up liking it way more than I would have expected. So like this, I agree that like the humor is what is making it interesting to me and like sets it apart a little bit.
Yeah, that humor wasn't like the gameplay in New Order was wonderful. Like first hour aside, which was sort of a crummy, slow opening of the game, was awesome. The combat was great. It was the level design was wonderful. And now it seems like they're doubling down into, like you said, the story. This takes place seemingly in an alternate version of late 50s, early 60s America, and it seems like there's more like NPC sort of like quiet moments. I like how I say that as it's just nonstop action. But yeah, it seems like these side characters you meet, you almost have this like Foxy Brown character, and this weird alternate technology of like armor that will appear on you and disappear.
I mean, we're at this point where Bethesda's basically just doing weird reimaginings of the 50s and 60s technology between Fallout and Prey and this.
It's also doing really weird reimaginings of its old franchises.
Yeah.
Like they did it with Wolfenstein a few years ago. It's continuing that on. Did it with Doom last year.
Yeah, I'm totally down.
I mean, to some extent, even with Prey.
Now, one thing we talked about, we saw a little bit of on the Sony show was PlayStation VR. They did have a ton of support. There was a ton of really cool stuff. There's Skyrim in VR, which made me pound my fist on the table and I think cry a little bit.
I think you yelled "suck it, plebes" to the war room.
I'm the only one in the room with my $600 hat because Brian was getting dinner or something. But no, I'm really happy about this. Sony did a lot of support with that. We're going to talk about this so much more. They announced also Final Fantasy 15 Monster of the Deep. There's me putting on my dumb hat. Monster. It's a Final Fantasy 15 fishing VR game, which is ridiculous. There's also one called Moss about a little mouse. I'm glad they finally showed us. They announced that Superhot is coming to PSVR.
Supermassive has a Until Dawn prequel.
Oh man,
Asylum.
That's awesome. So I'm really happy about that. We are going to talk about that so much more for the rest of the year. We've got to wrap up this edition of the E3 Beyond, a very special time. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out and goofing around. What are your final thoughts on this year's E3?
I think the last couple of years, Sony has done this like wow us immediately, and then when you step back, you're like, well, these games aren't coming for a long time between Shenmue and Final Fantasy VII and Death Stranding and everything. But I feel like this year, what they did was like they looked at last year's wowing and were like, all right, here's what God of War is, here's what Spider-Man is, here's what Detroit is.
A little bit, like I'm halfway between that and being like, I'm amazed we still don't have dates for those things.
Yeah.
Like I almost feel like I wish everything had been pushed back a little bit. Like I wish this was the year they revealed Spider-Man with that demo. I honestly, as much as I love last year's God of War demo, like same thing. I think these games are like, we see so many little bits and pieces before they finally come that I want, what I want to see from Sony and their other like 1,200 press conferences this year is better timing for this stuff. Because I want to know when I can play them.
Yeah, I'm just really happy that Spider-Man game is coming out and it looks like that. I'm totally happy with it looking a bit like Uncharted in those big set pieces because it looks incredible.
I think honestly, Sony had a great presentation of it was very grounded compared to previous years. I think that was sort of this E3 in general. Like I think everyone's sort of kind of just doing their homework. Like Sony was like, here's a bunch of stuff that's coming out. Some of it's coming out soon, some of it's not. All the third-party stuff is it's got stuff on PS4.
And all the small stuff wasn't on stage. They got out of the way before.
Microsoft announced their new console, and they were like, hey, if you want it, there it is. And then also, here's a bunch of stuff that's coming to both consoles. I think that's kind of becoming the platform for people who want to play PC games but don't have a PC. I think that's really cool. They've got like a crossplay with Windows 10. And then Nintendo was like, hey, we launched a new little toy this year, and we're continuing to make stuff for it. So like, it's a really good time to be a gamer regardless of your platform.
Like all four of us and everyone at IGN is exhausted and running on fumes right now, but I'm so excited because I'm like, I want to go see Beyond Good and Evil, and then I want to go play Mario, and then I want to go do PSVR stuff.
I am really happy about this year's E3. That wraps up the E3 edition of Beyond. You can catch regular episodes every Tuesday on IGN or youtube.com/IGN Beyond on our app, or just download the podcast. We really just type IGN Beyond in there. And thank you for watching. Take it easy, guys.
Live at E3 2017 is presented by Atomic Blonde, in theaters July 28th, and Omen by HP.
Someone set me up. Someone from the inside. MI6, CIA, everyone's involved. Now, Sony ends one way.